All right, welcome back to the TCI studio. You guys are going to unfortunately see this face more often as we do more videos.
Or does it see this face more often?
We are going to try to let you guys decide. But we are, as you can tell, we're rolling out a lot more videos. We got Alex and Emily were in here earlier, and Joanne and Taylor have been in here. So
they want to see them more.
Yeah,
except
you'd
for Alex.
rather see them than us.
Except for Alex.
Except for Alex, true.
Yeah.
He's kind of got that Ryan McGee thing going or something. All right, since we last had our series of videos we did last week, Will, it's been Tony Elliott world. You know, last weekend it was, Tennessee's got an opening now, and Tony's a major candidate, and will he go? Will he get interviewed? Will he decide to go? I don't want to talk about all that because we now know he did not take the job. They have a head coach. But we talked a lot over those 2 or 3 days about impacts and potential things and all of that. And I know you've written a little bit about that, and we talked about it in the Insider as well. You know, let's start with the topic of, you know, Tony didn't leave this year, but Clemson continues to lose coaches, and they're not necessarily the Jeff Scott coordinators, but it's a lot of the other coaches. And, you know, Dabo's built this big program. Mm-hmm. You know, you lose people like Cam and some of the guys the fans may not know as well, but we're losing bits and pieces every year.
Yeah, you're losing the analysts and stuff, guys of that. And those, as we call, those are the foundation guys. So when you look at Dabo's culture and what he's built at Clemson, you know, every part of that is important to what he's done. And he's got a system in place where he takes the Cam Akins of the world, if you will, and he kind of brings them in there. And if a position opens up, such as Tyler Grisham last year when Jeff Scott left, he moves them on into that spot. Kind of C.J. Spiller the same way this year. He brought him in that role, and he was able to promote him. So that's kind of been Dabo's MO on how he handles coaches leaving his staff and then bringing in a guy that he's kind of groomed, if you will, that understands the Clemson culture and things of that. Well, you know, we saw it with Terry Bowden left. He took 3 of the analysts with him, 3 guys in Maverick Morris, Rod McDowell, and Xavier Brewer, guys who definitely fit the Dabo Swinney Clemson culture as well as anybody. And, you know, and Dabo's happy for those guys because he wants them to get that experience. There's no doubt. But at the same time, it's still a little bit of peace here and there. And we've
more and more.
And you've seen that a couple times. A couple years ago, you saw a couple guys leave. When Jeff Scott left, he took Daquan Bowers with them. And now he's got Cam Aiken on his staff. So, a little bit more. They keep chiseling away at that foundation. And that is that going to hurt Clemson's program? We don't know yet. But it definitely is something that I'm sure Dabo looks at as he watches his program right now. He's really paying attention, more so than what me, you, or the fans would do, you know, when you look at the analyst situations.
Yeah, and, you know, obviously one of the things that's remarkable about what Nick Saban's done in Alabama is he's had to deal with all that, plus he's dealt with losing both coordinators a lot of years, or at least one coordinator every year, and so he's had to deal with that. Now, Dabo's philosophy, as you said, all those guys you mentioned, they were also all Clemson graduates and played here at Clemson. So, and Dabo likes to have those guys on the staff because when they're out there recruiting, or if they can't go out and recruit, when they're around the players and the recruits that come on campus, you know, they have that passion. They don't have to create the passion because that's their job. You know, they are orange. They bleed orange. But as you're seeing more and more people leave now, it's going to be interesting. You know, how does Dabo reload fast enough and have guys here long enough to build some of those same things that Dabo would like to have in his program?
Yeah, now the good news with some of that is that those guys that, you know, like an Xavier Dye a few years ago now, he's been coaching for 3 years. He was one of those guys too. So they're building some experience. Dustin Fry, another guy who was one of those analysts back in the day. Thomas Austin, another guy, Clemson guy, Dabo Swinney, coached under Dabo Swinney as well. So those guys got some experience, right? So if one or two of these positions leave, then you can bring some of these guys in that now are not just understand your program, but they're also experienced coaches, and so they got a little bit more on their resume, and
they're getting experience other places they wouldn't be able to get yet at Clemson.
Exactly. And so I think, you know, he can pull from there, and that will help allow him to kind of continue to replenish the other side of things. You know, he brought in one of his the Zhao guy who was played for Dabo at Alabama, understands the culture Dabo likes, and so he brings him in as one of the new analysts, right? And so, and by the way, that'll be approved officially this coming week. But but you know, he is on staff, going to be on staff, and so he's a guy that understands Dabo Swinney. He was the quarterback there for Alabama in the late '90s, early 2000s, and so Dabo knows him. He knows Dabo. They're experienced, and so you kind of got that relationship. It's a little bit like Todd Bates, if you will. So he's another guy from that same era. And so I think that's what Dabo's doing too, is kind of guys that he's either coached under him or played under him when he was a coach, assistant coach, or guys that he coached with or has got familiar with that are either Alabama or Clemson guys that he brings in that have that same passion and desire he has.
Well, Dabo's always self-scouting and seeing how he can do things better. And, you know, we talked a lot offline about, you know, when you start getting to the coordinator level and guys are leaving, then it's a question. Do I bring on the Brandon Streeter or the Richardson or some of the other guys you have in-house? Is that always the right answer? Or, you know, Nick Saban, basically, if it's an NFL head coach and they lose a job, they're calling Nick Saban. And he's bringing in that type of folks. And obviously, he's being very successful as well. So, you know, we've talked about it. The other point we're going to talk about a little bit here is, you know, a lot of Tony's always been about timing. Wouldn't take a lot of the other jobs because he was getting hit up with those in the middle of the season, right before the playoff. This job was perfect timing. He may be at the point now where he has to go when it's not the right timing. So you and I have talked about this. You know, if you're a Clemson fan, you're glad that Tony's back. But the flip side of that is there's a good chance that Tony might decide to leave in December because he's going to continue to have opportunities. And if he's not going to be here for the playoff or having to coach when he's already accepted a job at another school through the playoff, in some ways would Clemson have been better off had you made that change now versus potentially having to make that change in December. And you and I have talked about it. Dabo's got to be planning for that now, saying, what happens if this does happen in December?
You got to think, and we don't know definitely, right? But you got to think Dabo and Tony, you know, with the relationship that they have, that they've talked about a succession plan, right? And so, and I'm sure Dabo, being the guy who kind of likes to give advice and wants to make sure his coaches, you know, understand everything they need to know, I can imagine he's probably set Tony down and say, Tony, look, I appreciate you, and I know you got this, you don't want to leave at this point, and nobody appreciates that loyalty more than me, but at some point, you're going to have to look out for Tony. And if you get an opportunity to where you can go to a Power 5 school and interview for a job, and it's right during the ACC championship game or during the college football playoff run, you might have to go at least interest because, as you know, Robert, all those jobs come open late November, early December.
And now you've got early signing day in December.
And then that's the next thing I was about to say. You throw in early signing day, it's even a bigger deal now to get guys in during that 2-week window as fast as they can. And so if you're Tony, you can't keep wasting those opportunities because if you want to be a head coach, as we think he does, you got to start taking some. So if you're Dabo Swinney, maybe you sit him aside and say, hey, look, let's start thinking of a plan where you don't feel guilty, right? Where you don't feel like you're letting Clemson down because you're not. We're going to support you. So let's start thinking of a plan where both of us kind of come together and figure out how we're going to make it to where if you do have to take a job, we're going to be okay and not going to have any issues.
One thing we talked about yesterday, I think, is if you're Dabo and you're working on a plan, again, we think he might want to just promote from within. But also, you've got a guy like Chad Morris, who knows your program, knows Clemson, has lived here, who's sitting out there with no job, I don't think, right now. He hadn't gone anywhere as a coordinator.
I haven't heard it, or an analyst.
You know, I wouldn't be shocked, and we haven't heard anybody talk about this. So this is just Will and I speculating. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we hear that Chad Morris is going to be an analyst at Clemson this year.
Why not?
You've got him on staff.
Yeah.
So if things do go down the way we think it could in December, you've got another really good mind there to help you through that process.
And yeah, why not do it? I mean, you know, I know Dabo and Chad have a good relationship, and they respect each other, and there's a lot of common ground there. And here's a guy who the offense you're running, by the way, is his offense. Now, Tony and Jeff tweaked it and made it work different, and they've, used it to their personnel. But, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there. You think about who Clemson has at quarterback right now, right? With DJ. All right. DJ is the prototypical quarterback for this offense, right? I mean, he's 6'5", 250 pounds, can run the power.
And of our last 3 or 4 quarterbacks, who does he remind you the most of?
He reminds you the most of Cam Newton, who
I was going to say Taj Boyd.
Or Taj. I was going to say that. I was going to say Taj Boyd at Clemson. Cam Newton, who ran the offense first with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, and that's what it was for. And then just Taj Boyd here at Clemson.
Now DJ's better than Taj, but
faster, stronger.
He's got a lot of the same characteristics.
Correct. Yeah, and that 3rd and 1 quarterback power is a no-brainer. You run DJ on that. Clemson would have ran him more this year with that hadn't he injured his shoulder. I think in the Miami games when he injured his shoulder. So you probably would have saw more of that this year if it wasn't for the injured shoulder. So, I think he's perfect for it. And you bring a guy like Chad Morris in who can groom him like he did Taj. Think about the job. Chad did a great job. He doesn't get enough credit for the job he did with Taj Boyd. And Taj will tell you that too. He was really patient with Taj, and he worked with him. And Taj, you saw Taj progress all the way from the time he was a sophomore all the way to his senior year. It was like night and day for Taj. And Chad Morris deserves all that credit. And I think he do a great job with DJ as well.
Well, and one thing we noticed on that front too, when Brandon Streeter did come in, and he was the quarterback coach, we saw the QB play improve because he had that really, really solid quarterback coach. If you got somebody like Chad Morris in the mix and say you want to make Streeter the coordinator or whatever, you've got another person that can help you fill that role
void
as well.
Absolutely, and that goes a big, that goes a long way when you have a guy who can just focus on the quarterback, such as Brandon Streeter has done for the last 6 years, right? It's just he's doing quarterback only. You've seen how good the quarterback. Of course, it's helped that you got guys, like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence being the 2 quarterbacks. But look how much it's helped. Look how much those guys have gotten better. And those 2 guys will tell you Brandon Streeter played a big role in their progression and gotten better as quarterbacks because, hey, look, Streeter played the position, and so he understands it, and that helped a lot. So if you got another guy in there who played who coached quarterbacks before and all that, that's only going to help.
All right, so that's a deep dive into just some of the things we talk about all the time offline, and we thought we'd share some of that with you just to give you guys some things to think about on what might be coming, some of the things, and how all these little pieces might impact Clemson as we're going to continue to see more and more of that. Thank you for tuning in to TCI. We'll have a lot more for you here from the TCI studio. Stay tuned to the Clemson Insider for your most complete coverage of Clemson football and recruiting.